brought to you by bedroombattlefields.com. This is the Tabletop Miniature Hobby Podcast. Welcome back to the podcast, Robert.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
Is it really though? You say that?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
There's other things you could be doing.
Well, I was going to do some gardening, so this is a nice little diversion.
Yeah, time of recording, it's not rained for about 8 weeks, which is like apocalypse in Scotland. I put down, not to take us off topic too much, but I put down some seeds in the garden, and that is pretty much the cue for the weather to just, you know, you're getting no more rain now. So
God has abandoned your seed.
I thought you were going to say something else there, but yeah, so we are playing God today. We're controlling the lives of our troops, send them into battle, lots of them will die. We're playing at 6mm scale today, and we're playing a game called Mayhem. So it's a higher up look at things. We're pretty used to the skirmish games, aren't we, where you've individual characters and stuff like that, but here we're going to be commanding a couple of armies each and having at it.
Very nice. Yeah, I can see that we're a bit more zoomed out, if you like, looking down at the landscape here. Yeah,
describe the playing area to the listener then. What have we got here in front of us?
Well, mostly open plains, couple of trees to one side. There is a stream running, or a river, I guess, running alongside it, with a bridge going across it and a road that stretches off left and right. A little pond at one side, a couple of houses, cottages maybe, scattered about.
Yeah, a bit of copse of trees here and there, wee hill on the side.
Yeah, it looks like a nice little bit of killing ground in the middle.
Yeah, it's idyllic. I mean, you could have a nice pub and beer garden here. There's no need to actually fight. We could just sit and have a beer on this tiny world. Two huge giants drinking a beer. Imagine my wife came home, we were both just sitting on the table there, and that we were, you know, we're actually just gods.
Yeah, just eight beers in saying, yeah, well, you see, we started talking about how there's not been a lot of rain, and then one thing led to another.
So, yeah, this game, I've had the creator on the podcast before, and I've been really excited to get it on the table and have a bash at it. So you're going to be buzzing for this, Robert. I had to get us some exotic polyhedral dice. Do you know what these, like, they all came in wee bags, these sets. Do you know what these are? Because I don't, but I assumed you might.
Well, I'm seeing a bull, a horse, a hawk or an eagle. That looks like a dragon. That looks like a Mortal Kombat dragon. This one, oops, looks, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I recognize some of the animals, but I don't know if it's like Zodiac or...
I just thought it was maybe something you'd came across in the RPG world, like classes or schools or whatever, but obviously not.
No.
But in each bag we've got, there's one that's opened, the good old sound of dice on table. We've got D4 right up to D20, because on this game your troops have certain stats which are represented by dice. So
right,
it's it's going to be quite interesting. So we'll get started. We'll take a couple of turns to kind of learn the ropes, I reckon, and then we'll maybe catch up halfway in and just find out how it's going.
Absolutely.
All right, so we've just deployed there. So I should have said before that we're playing Orc and Goblin versus Empire. So what's your troop line looking like over there, Robert? What units have you got available?
My army is deployed. I've got my spearmen, two lots of spearmen who are flanking the Orc warriors, and over on the left, Wolf Riders. Let me start again. The Orc warriors are flanked by Goblin spearmen, and then on the left we've got Goblin Wolf Riders and Goblin archers.
Interesting deployment of the archers right behind the house, because that's what you want, is your archers just to basically be looking into somebody's bedroom. They're actually just goblin perverts. Yeah. They're all giving each other a footy up, just looking in the window.
Yeah, they're gonna get into the house and then go to the front windows and do it from there, like young guns.
That's it. That's actually the reason for this battle. That's why it's happened.
What? So, Attack of the perverts.
Yeah. On the road at the other side, the road runs sort of parallel to the battle, I guess you would say. So it's not, I wouldn't say it's a key strategic area, but we're we're kind of all lined up on it. So I've got in the centre, I've got 2 units of archers, out on the right flank, unit of men-at-arms, and out on the left, a unit of mounted knights. So you've got the extra unit, but I would say the overall quality of my units is slightly higher here. I think that's generally how it works with greenskins, isn't it? So
yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, interesting times. We'll see what's what. Now we do a roll to find out our amount of command points, and then I'm going to talk you through how that works and how you begin to start getting your troops up the table.
I'll do my best to listen and understand.
Excellent. That's all we could ask for then.
Yeah.
See you soon. All right, so we're well into the battle now, aren't we? Quite a lot's happened so far.
Yeah, once we got the hang of things started to move along. Well, I was going to say smoothly, I don't know about that, but things are happening anyway.
Yeah, I think in the start, so you took charge of the Orc and Goblin army, I took charge of the Empire army, and in the start it looked like, if you remember back to when we played Song of Blades and Heroes here, and you were rolling like the worst I've ever seen, and I was rolling the best I've ever seen, and it actually, like the first couple of turns, well, it started off, we did our command rolls to see how many command points we got. I was rolling a D8, you were rolling a D6, so I had the advantage, and I rolled an 8 and you rolled a 1, so you got off on like the worst possible footing, where you had, basically you could move 1 unit once, and I had like 8 points to play with, and I was able to get into a few good positions, get some shots away with the archers, and it looked at that point like it was just going to quickly go downhill for you. So
yeah, it looked bleak because I thought, well, you're always going to have 2 more command points on average, let's say.
Yeah.
And I was never going to be able to recover from that horrible worst case scenario deficit at the beginning. But no, we kind of evened it up a bit. You've allowed me to have 8 command points, the same as you, which I'm grateful for, I have to say, because I think it's helped to possibly turn the battle in my favour a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, at face value, it doesn't look that much of an advantage, like 8 versus 6, but it actually, you know, over the course of the game, it'll add up to quite a lot of extra turns and options, won't it? So
yeah, it's like throwing 4 punches every round rather than 3.
So what have we actually got casualties wise? I've killed your Orc warriors, marchers, wiped them out, and you have killed my men at arms and my 1 unit of marchers.
Yeah.
So I think it was your well, first things first, who killed the men at arms? It was your archers, wasn't it?
I think it was a crit or something, wasn't it?
It was, I think so. No, the archers, so that was one point where we're not quite sure on. So for the listeners' benefit, if you've not played this game before and if you're not familiar with it, there's a volley fire rule. And this is like, I've always wondered about this in war games, because when you see, like, you know, when you watch films or TV shows where you see archers, they're very rarely, firing the arrows like straight along the ground, straight into somebody, unless it's very close range. A lot of the archers that you see, they're shooting up in the air and they don't necessarily have a direct line of sight to their targets. So it's like it's up in the air and down and dropping on the targets.
Kind of like artillery.
Yeah. And I always wondered about that in games, because a lot of games demand line of sight, and that's quite unrealistic.
Yeah.
So I like how this game has the volley fire option. So what you could do, you could rely on the line of sight of another friendly unit, and you could shoot over something onto your target. But the criteria is, instead of doing damage, you are able to drive them back if you score a hit. But then what happened, Robert, because when you're rolling for damage in this game, you're trying to roll lower. And you rolled a 1, and a 1's a critical hit. But this particular move, you're not meant to damage, but I felt that, I'm sure the rule will be clarified somewhere. I just feel the 1 is the critical hit, and you rolled the 1. So even though it wasn't a roll to damage, it just seemed reasonable to let you have that 1. So
that's probably generous of you, but yeah, I totally get what you mean, because otherwise, what does the crit do? Does it drive your forces back even further, or maybe it drives them back and disorders them or something? Yeah.
I mean, I suppose you could come up with your own interpretations of that, like you've just said. That might have been a good option, but for narrative's sake, this is us just getting to grips with the game, and I'm enjoying it. You start to pick it up quicker and quicker, and I think it's just getting used to that. like I was saying to you when we were playing, if the rolling lower thing was always the case, then you would get used to it quicker. But we've got scenarios where we're still trying to roll higher, where we're trying to measure distances, where we're trying to get leadership points, or where we're trying to move. We want to roll higher. But then when we're actually trying to hurt people, we're trying to roll lower. So you've always got to be on your sort of intellectual toes, which I don't have any, to be quite honest. I've just got hooves. So,
well, I mean, it confounds the dice as well, and you can't say, "Oh, this is terrible." Like the dice keep rolling low all the time. There's got to be a bit of mix and matching, and it just, that's just probability for you.
So yeah, I mean, I really like. It's one of these games that I think if you played a game of it like we are now, as your practice run, and then if you played another game at the back of it, I reckon you'd have a really good time of it, because you'd be well versed. You would know a lot of what you were doing in the setup, and you would go in with a bit of tactics. Whereas just now we're back and forward to the sheet, back and forward to the book, not excessively, but we're clarifying certain points, or we're having to double check things, and that's just the nature of the beast when you're playing a game for the first time, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even Monopoly players still have to do that. Like, wait a minute, what? Yeah, what? Right, yeah, okay. It's 90% you mortgage it for.
Or you just don't play Monopoly, you put it in the bin.
That's right.
But I would say at the moment, so what we got on the table, so what I tried to do, I tried to get my cavalry down the left flank past the river, and I wanted to cut in and cause some chaos on your rear. I wanted to take you from the rear. Mm-hmm. And I did actually. Your Goblin Spearmen sort of countered that, but they lost out to me. So they're in the process of trying to run away. We've still got that's Goblin Spearmen down there. We've got Goblin Archers. Your Wolf Riders, they charged into the Archers, but they got beaten hand-to-hand combat, which is a bit embarrassing. Bunch of Archers. Yeah. But that same unit of Archers have now been removed. So yeah, I've lost 2 units. I did start with a unit deficit as well. So I've only got 2 units on the table now. So, and you've picked up more command points than me this turn. You've still got a couple to play with, I believe. So
yeah, I do. 4.
It's going to be tricky for me now. I mean, my mounted knights are pretty formidable, but they're not going to be able to take on a small army themselves.
Yeah, no, that's right. And I've got a few options here of, well, obviously I want to get to the Archers, but the flip side with that is that your mounted knights, I want them to come to me, to some of my other units. So I'm thinking about which ones I'll move, which ones I'll simply get prepared for your advance, and then, I don't know, the old pincer movement maybe. It'll be interesting. And it's funny, as we're starting to get to grips with it, our tactics are maybe changing slightly, like me moving my spearmen round the first time so that I could see your mounted knights were coming around, and it's like, okay, right, I'm going to get a penalty if you attack me from the flank or even from the rear, so I need to spend a point just turning round. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Worth doing, though. Yeah,
I mean, we'll kind of dig into it at the end, or more extensive thoughts on the game, but it is, to me, for like in my narrow experience of playing rank and flank games or mass battle games, they could be quite slow and ponderous, whereas I find this, it's just quite quick and bloody. Like, Christ, we're in combat now, Christ, he's dead. Like, it could happen quite quickly, all the sort of combat and removing units and stuff like that. So it's got a nice pace to it. It's not one of the games where you look at the clock and 3 hours has passed and we've just about reached the enemy.
We've decided that I'll go the Goblins.
Yeah. So let's play the rest of it out, and then we'll catch up and just give our final thoughts, I suppose.
Once more into the breach.
So Robert, it feels like only minutes since we last spoke.
Yes, but those few minutes were action-packed, and it's all over.
Yeah, I mean, when we caught up at quote-unquote half-time, so I was holding out with a unit of archers and a unit of cavalry, unit of mounted knights. So I got myself quite a lot of command points. I think I got 7 So I spent a lot of points engineering this perfect move where I did a bit of manoeuvring and charged up right behind the Goblin Spearman in the middle of I was going to call it a park there, the middle of the field. So all advantage, I'm attacking from the rear, I've got advantages there. I'm charging you, I've got lances, it's pretty much, I think I was rolling a D4 in the end. So bearing in mind, I'm trying to roll lower. You were rolling a D20. So I took the default, which was a 2. So all you could do was roll a 1. And what happened?
I rolled a 1.
Rolled a 1, of course you did. So scored a critical hit on me again. And just one of those moments where you're like, I literally can't believe that happened. So, yeah, but you did it. And then, of course, with my remaining points, I still had a lot to play with just this unit of archers left. So I think I had like 4 or 5 pops at your spearman and nothing happened. So, and then your wolf riders have got in behind me and they've done the business there, haven't they? So it's over.
That's incredible. I've had like 4 or 5 crits.
Yeah, that's right. And but I think that's a good thing about the game, like having that critical option, because it's it could be said that it's a bit too volatile, but I just think it adds a fun narrative element. Like you wondered, what actually happened in that charge to make the spearman win. There must have been something that happened, whether it was, I don't know, maybe in my cavalry there was a traitor in the ranks or something. Maybe the horses had been poisoned. You just don't know.
Or one of the lead horses went over and into a little foxhole and went down, and the others all clattered over it. And just it's in the lap of the gods. But that, otherwise, if it was a bit more clinical or sterile, then you could just feed the data into a spreadsheet, and work out who won. But you need to have that little bit of chaos, because that's what the universe is all about, right?
Yeah, and it was chaotic. Like I said before, we got to grips with each other quite quickly. There was fighting early on. There was death early on. So it was right into the action. There was no West Side Story style manoeuvring towards each other. I've just realised I referenced West Side Story in a recent article. It just seems to be a recurring theme in this podcast now. But
excellent.
We danced towards each other and got to it pretty quickly. So I'm thinking like we played 4 units against 5 there. And I've always thought that, especially with 28mm mass battles, maybe 6 units ahead is this kind of sweet spot between it not being over too quickly but not taking all day.
Yeah.
But I think with these rules, I think you could accommodate double the amount of units that we had on the table and still have a pretty quick game, I would say, especially once you get into the rules.
Yeah, once we know the rules and it's muscle memory, then it could be really interesting really quickly when you suddenly get 3 units at once to go flying forward and do whatever it is. And it could become, there's a lot of options there. Yeah, and the board's big enough, and I think there could be more units.
Yeah, and there's all sorts of rules. Again, because we're playing an introductory game, there are probably some extra rules that we've not quite looked into or utilised. Like, from memory, I believe, if you had, say, 3 or 4 or even 2 blocks of infantry units, you could line them up together and set them to march forward each turn on the default. So you're just basically a set and forget. Over on the left flank, we've got these 3 or 4 units infantry, and we just want them to continue up the table until otherwise instructed. You've got wee things like that you could do.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
So if you were really looking to play a big game with, 15, 20 units aside, you could be looking at things like that, the tactical side of it. But I definitely think next time we play it, I'd like to maybe, I'd like more units of archers, I'd like more units of infantry or spearmen, more cavalry, and maybe, the old war machine as well, whether that's cannons or volley guns or whatever. I think that would just add to the spectacle too.
Maybe a giant troll that can barely move.
Yeah, aye. There's also we're doing a pitched battle, so we had no real scenario apart from that one where the goblin was trying to peep in the window, but I dare say you could bring in an objective that's different than just go and batter your opponent, go and kill everyone. It might be hold out for X amount of turns. It might be, capture this objective, or it might be get to this place or get them there, whatever. I don't know.
Retrieve the magic artifact from the middle and get it back to your own lines.
Yeah. So I'm all for that, the scenario side of things. But like I keep saying, I think when you're trying something like this for the first time, and especially when it's so different to what we've been playing recently, I think you want less there and just try and get used to it.
Yeah. This was a great introduction. I'd be very keen to play it again.
Which army would you like to opt for next time? Because we went humans against orcs and goblins. It's a classic Hulk Hogan versus Ultimate Warrior lineup. But what could we maybe look at in future?
You mean like Chaos Marines that have been stranded in the past, something like that?
Yeah. Dwarves holding out, because dwarves always have to defend, don't they? Because they're just not fast enough to attack.
Yeah.
And in terms of table setup as well, you know what? Like, we've used roads and rivers here. I mean, they've been on the table. They've not really been part of it. But I've always been curious about the roles of rivers in these games, because if you put a river through the middle of it, and you've got, my troops on that side of the river, your troops on this side, there's always a thing about, like, what does the river count as on the table? I know it's terrain, difficult terrain, whatever, but are you going to make everyone go over the bridge, or are you just going to give them a penalty for crossing the river not on the bridge? Do you make a couple of fords that you could cross? You've got to consider these things as well, I suppose, don't you?
Yeah, there was a game, on the Amiga and probably other platforms called North and South, to do with the American Civil War. And you did have these, like, a couple of different units, like cannons, riflemen, and what's the other one? Cavalry and stuff. And occasionally the maps that you maybe fought on would have, like, little rivers or a bridge, and you're trying to get everybody across the bridge before they kill you with the cannons, and and it became basically bottlenecked, and it was a lot of fun, actually. And I could see that happening here, where, like, you've got two archers, I've only got one, and there's a river, so you're holding back and you're just trying to pick me off, doing a considerable bit of damage before I can get my mostly melee guys across the river. So it's a long-winded way of saying it depends on the units you've got, I guess.
I saw a cool way, because I looked at a few folk playing this on YouTube. It's not that easy to find folk creating content around this game, because it's not as well known. Although it's a bit of a cult classic, it's not as well known as your Frostgraves and games like that. Mm-hmm. But there are a couple of really good. I wish I had the name to hand. There's a good YouTube channel. The guy was playing a game of this, and he had a pretty cool looking setup where I think he had an army of goblins and he had a river, and I think what was happening there was the goblins were trying to build a temporary bridge, and the defenders had X amount of turns to try and destroy that bridge. So the longer they went over there uninterrupted, the more chance they had of getting extra troops over. So There was a permanent bridge, and then they also had this option to try and cross the river at another side as well. So
that's interesting then, because you've got it's a time as a factor, basically.
Yeah, and I quite like that in games. Like, if you look at a game like Dungeon Saga, I can't remember if like, say, Hero Quest or that did this, but that timing element of you've got, you're racing against the clock. You can't just go in every room and check it. You've got to use your time resource pretty well. There's certain things you've just got to forget about, because you need to make things happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So it's another game to add to our small rotation, I suppose.
Yeah.
But I would like to play this again sooner rather than later, whilst it's fresh in the minds, because I definitely think playing it again, if we had the time today, if we played it again, you would definitely get a better game. Not that I've not enjoyed this one, but it's very much been a sort of learning game.
Yeah, absolutely, because I'm looking at some of the stats thinking, D20, that's great, and then realising halfway through, like, no, I need to roll low. Mm-hmm, D20 is not what you want.
Yeah, and the soft and hard counters thing's cool as well, because you could really, with your tactics, you could start to look at, okay, these spearmen have a great advantage against this cavalry, so when I see them deployed over there, I want my spearmen here. I know that on the flip side, the cavalry can do a bit of damage against this unit. So you start to go after certain units where, your strengths, and defend your weaknesses a bit better as well.
Yeah, there's another game on the PC called Rome Total War, if you've ever heard of that.
Didn't know the Romans were involved in any wars.
Yeah, a couple. They got into a few scrapes. But yeah, it was similar to this kind of layout actually, with your archers and you're trying to lay them out in a certain way. You should look up the odd video and a really good game. And it's this. I don't know why it didn't remind me of this until now, but here we are.
So I will get together for a game of this again, and we'll obviously have to get back to the old Shadow Deep as well, because Grub and Co will be getting itchy feet because we've not had them on the table for a wee while.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, always good to roll some dice. We never did figure out, we've got these wee dice bags, these polyhedral dice bags, so we never did figure out what the logos were. I was relying on you to have that knowledge. A mixture of sort of
Eastern and Western.
White power tattoos, basketball logos, and Mega Drive games.
Chinese calendars that you get from the takeaway.
It's an eclectic mix, isn't it?
Yeah, because you've got what I figured out was a warthog, a bull, a dragony demon, then a proper Mortal Kombat style dragon, a knight, not a knight, like a chess knight, the horse. God, I don't know. Maybe it's banners from Game of Thrones.
Could be.
Bugger knows.
But first time in my life that I've rolled a D4 in anger, and it did disappoint because I took the default and you rolled a 1 and that was that.
Yeah,
half. So I'll be putting that D4 in the bin, I think.
Yeah.
But, no, really enjoyed it, and thanks for the game. We'll definitely report on the next one too, which will be bigger and bloodier, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks very much for listening to this episode of the Tabletop Miniature Hobby Podcast. If you enjoy the show, then please do share it with someone else you think might enjoy it too. And be sure to check out our Discord community of like-minded hobbyists, which you could find at bedroombattlefields.com/Discord. It'd be great to see you in there.